Look at your bank statement right now. Somewhere on it quietly a number is working against you, not stealing from you in one dramatic moment, but draining you 1 percentage point at a time. You call it interest. You call it a loan. You call it normal. But what if the entire system you were born into was never designed for your peace? You wake up every morning inside an economy built on debt. Your mortgage is debt. Your car is debt. Your credit card is debt. Even the country you live in runs on debt, trillions of it compounding while you sleep. And you were taught this is just how money works. Borrow, leverage, grow. But ask yourself something honest. Has any of it actually made you feel secure? Here's the sharp truth. Debt-based economies do not just lend you money. They lend you a relationship with money that never lets you rest. You are always paying something off, always servicing something. The house you think you own actually owns a piece of you. Every single month for 30 years. That is not freedom. That is a beautifully disguised cage. Think about the last time you took out a loan or used a credit card or financed something on installments. Did anyone explain to you what you were actually agreeing to? Probably not the philosophy of it. Just the monthly payment. Just the number. But behind that number is a principle so old it predates your great-grandparents, and so dangerous that one of history's most rigorous economic systems built an entire civilization around eliminating it. That principle is Riba. In plain modern language, Riba means an unjustified guaranteed return on money itself, charged regardless of whether the underlying venture succeeds or fails. It is the lender saying, I take no risk, but you guarantee me profit anyway. Sound familiar? That is every interest-bearing loan you have ever heard of. Why does this matter so much that it is mentioned explicitly in the Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah, as a direct declaration of war against the practice? Because Riba severs the natural link between risk and reward. In a healthy economy, profit is earned by sharing risk, by building something, by adding real value. In a Riba-based economy, money simply multiplies itself, sitting in a bank vault demanding tribute from anyone who needs to borrow it. The rich who do not need loans get richer doing nothing. The poor who do need loans get poorer paying for the privilege of surviving. This is the invisible trap. It is not visible because it has been normalized for centuries. Every payday loan, every compounding credit card balance, every interest-bearing mortgage operates on the same hidden engine. And the engine does not care about your effort, your hustle, or your dreams. It only cares about time. The longer you owe, the more it takes. Now here is where it gets interesting, because Islamic economics did not just identify the problem. It built an entire alternative architecture, one that modern economists are only now starting to circle back to with real curiosity. At the center of that architecture is a concept called Mudharabah. In plain English, Mudharabah is a profit and loss sharing partnership. One party brings the capital. The other brings the labor, the skill, the execution. If the venture profits, both share according to a pre-agreed ratio. If it loses, the capital provider absorbs the financial loss, and the working partner loses their time and effort. Notice what just happened. Risk and reward are tied together again. Nobody gets a guaranteed return for doing nothing. This is not a fringe idea preserved only in old manuscripts. Contemporary institutions like AAOIFI, the Accounting and Auditing Organization for Islamic Financial Institutions, exist specifically to standardize and certify how modern banks apply these centuries-old principles to real 21st century products. From home financing to business loans to investment funds, when you hear that a financial product is Sharia compliant, AAOIFI standards are very often the invisible backbone, making sure the structure genuinely avoids riba, avoids gharar, which is excessive uncertainty or hidden deception in a contract, and avoids investing in industries considered harmful, like alcohol, gambling, or exploitative interest-based lending itself. Let's make this practical, because principles only matter if you can use them. Say you want to buy a house in a debt-based system. The conventional path is simple. The bank lends you the full price, you pay it back with interest over decades, and the bank profits whether your life goes well or falls apart. Now compare that to a structure like Murabaha, a cost-plus profit sale, where instead of lending you money and charging interest on it, the financial institution actually buys the asset itself and then resells it to you at a transparent fixed markup, paid in installments. No compounding interest. No hidden penalty engine. Just a disclosed profit margin on a real transaction involving a real asset. The relationship is fundamentally different because everyone has skin in the actual deal. not just a claim on your future cash flow. Or take Musharakah, a joint partnership where you and the financial institution co-own an asset, like a home together. You gradually buy out the institution's share over time, often paying a fair usage fee on the portion you have not yet purchased, similar in spirit to rent. With every payment, your ownership grows and the bank's shrinks until eventually the home is fully yours. Compare that emotionally to a 30-year mortgage where, for the first decade, almost every payment you make goes purely toward interest, and you barely touch the principal. Which of these two structures actually feels honest to you? Now think about your everyday wealth-building decisions, not just housing. When you invest in a Sukuk, often called an Islamic bond, you are not lending money to collect guaranteed interest like a conventional bond. You are buying a certificate that represents partial ownership in a real, tangible, income-generating asset, like infrastructure, real estate, or equipment. Your return comes from the actual profits or rental income that asset generates, not from a guaranteed interest payment regardless of performance. Real assets, real returns, real risk shared fairly. You might be asking yourself, does avoiding Riba mean accepting lower returns, slower growth, less opportunity? This is exactly the myth that keeps people trapped in systems that quietly erode their long-term peace. Scholars like the late Sheikh Mohammed Taqi Usmani, one of the most respected voices in modern Islamic finance, have spent decades demonstrating that asset-backed, risk-shared financing is not a spiritual sacrifice bolted onto your economic life. It is a more honest economic logic. Every dollar tied to a real asset, a real partnership, a real shared risk, is a dollar grounded in something that actually exists, rather than money simply breeding more money out of thin air. Even contemporary economists outside the Islamic tradition have pointed out the structural fragility of debt-saturated economies. Hyman Minsky, the economist behind the concept of financial instability, argued that debt-based systems are inherently prone to crisis because debt accumulates faster than the real economic activity needed to service it. Sound familiar? That is essentially the same warning embedded in the prohibition of riba 1400 years earlier, just expressed in modern economic language instead of revelation. So what does building wealth the halal way actually look like inside a debt-based world you cannot fully escape? It starts with a mindset shift before it becomes a portfolio shift. Stop asking, how can I leverage debt to grow faster? Start asking, how can I partner, share risk, and own real assets instead? Practically, this means seeking out Sharia-compliant investment funds that screen out interest-bearing instruments and prohibited industries. It means exploring Islamic home financing structures like Murabaha or Musharakah, instead of conventional interest mortgages where they are available to you. It means building an emergency fund and savings strategy that avoids interest-bearing accounts in favor of profit-sharing investment accounts, where the bank actually invests your deposit in real ventures and shares the resulting profit with you, rather than simply paying you a fixed interest rate, disconnected from any real economic activity. It also means looking closely at your daily spending habits. The pay later apps, the revolving credit balances, the buy now, pay later checkout buttons that feel harmless, because they are marketed as convenience rather than what they often structurally are. Every one of these deserves the same scrutiny you would give a formal loan contract, because the underlying mechanics are frequently identical. None of this is about rejecting ambition. Build your business. Grow your savings. Invest aggressively if that fits your risk tolerance. The goal was never to make you poorer or more passive. The goal is to make your wealth-building process structurally honest, so that the way you grow your money does not quietly violate the values you claim to hold, and does not quietly erode the peace, the barakah, that the wealth was supposed to bring you in the first place. Because here is the deeper reframe underneath all of this. Wealth built on riba may grow your bank balance while shrinking your peace. Wealth built on shared risk, real assets, and honest partnership grows your bank balance while protecting it. The Quran does not call riba forbidden simply as a religious technicality. It calls it a declaration of war precisely because it understood, 14 centuries before modern behavioral economists studied debt psychology, that a person enslaved to interest payments can never truly feel secure, no matter how high their income climbs. Consider one more layer most people never think about, which is how this debt-based architecture shapes your relationship with time itself. When you owe interest, time becomes your enemy. Every month that passes, the lender wins a little more regardless of what you actually built with that money. But when your wealth is structured around real partnership and real assets, time becomes your ally instead. The property you co-own with a Musharakah structure appreciates with the market. The business you fund through Mudharabah grows with effort and opportunity. The Sukuk you hold earns through actual rental income or operational profit. In every case, time is working alongside you, not against you. That single shift from time as enemy to time as ally is part of what the Quran calls barakah, a kind of blessing that is not just spiritual decoration but a tangible, lived experience of sufficiency and calm, even when the number on your account is not the biggest it could theoretically be. There is also a deeper community dimension worth naming, because Islamic economics was never designed purely as a private wealth strategy for individuals. The classical jurist Ibn Khaldun, writing centuries before modern macroeconomics existed, observed that economies built on extraction rather than production eventually hollow themselves out, because wealth concentrates without circulating, and circulation, not accumulation, is what keeps a society economically alive. Riba, by design, concentrates wealth upward without requiring productive contribution. Profit and loss sharing models, by contrast, force capital to actually touch the real economy, fund real businesses, and create real employment before any return is generated. Choosing halal financial structures is not just about your personal peace of mind. It is, in a very literal sense, choosing to participate in an economy that circulates rather than extracts. This is why the question is never really, can I afford to avoid riba? The more honest question is, can you afford the long-term cost of staying inside a system that was never built with your well-being as the priority? Every interest payment you make is not just a number leaving your account. It is a small, repeated transfer of your labor, your time, and your future stability to an entity that took none of the risk you took. Once you see that clearly, you cannot easily unsee it. So go back to that bank statement. Look at it again, not as a victim of the system you were born into, but as someone who finally understands the architecture behind it. You do not have to dismantle the entire global economy to build wealth differently. You only have to start making one transaction, one decision, one partnership at a time, choosing real ownership over invisible obligation. Because true wealth was never just about how much you accumulate. It was always about whether what you accumulate actually lets you rest.